DAPL-style protesters could face jail under a new critical infrastructure protection law. Interesting. We don't really do much to protect people. We don't really do much to protect people. When it comes to laws helping or protecting people, ooh, how are we going to pay for that? Where are we going to... We can't do that. But as far as critical infrastructure, which I don't know if you've driven around this country, I have, they can substitute the phrase critical infrastructure with infrastructure. They can just, our roads are terrible. Our roads are terrible. And 278 zip codes don't have clean water. Richest country in the world, don't forget. Don't forget. And DAPL, they were protesting some of that stuff, weren't they? They were protesting the Dakota Access Pipeline that was going to go through what? Their land. Land that was theirs. And what happened to them? They were pummeled with freezing cold water and freezing cold temperature. Literally hired enforcement were hired to brutalize them. That's what they were hired for, to pummel them with cold water. We should have had legislation protecting protesters the next day. In a land that claims to celebrate freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, where we entertain the idea that at times dissidence is the greatest form of patriotism. That's something I believe all the time and every day. But no, instead we protect quote unquote critical infrastructure. And what do we want to do to these people? Standing up for land that is theirs, standing up for a cause, standing up for the rights of other human beings. Whatever the protest may be, we want to punish them more. We want to punish them. Because I guess the punishments that we've had has not been enough. I guess people at DAPL getting pummeled with freezing cold water in sub-zero temperatures, that wasn't enough. I guess at Occupy, when police were routinely roughing up protesters. One of them sprayed an 80-year-old woman in the face with pepper spray. An 80-year-old woman sprayed in the face with pepper spray. I guess that's they're getting away with stuff here. That's not. I guess Ferguson. I guess in Ferguson, when people were protesting the execution of an unarmed black teenager. The execution with no consequence. When people were protesting that, they were greeted by cops with guns drawn. Guns pointed, by the way. But I guess we need more legislation cracking down on protesters. I guess, I mean, they just have it so great. How about Heather Heyer in Charlottesville that got murdered by a car? There should be laws protecting protesters, not laws demonizing people that protest further. If this law passes in Louisiana, that's one of the states legislation like this is in. There's legislation in Minnesota, Louisiana, Iowa, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania. A protester could go to prison for participating in a peaceful protest at a pipeline construction site or for taking part in a discussion. Taking part in a discussion about that possibility. Quotes like that, you wonder if George Orwell had a time machine and traveled into the future, then came back and wrote 1984 and was thinking, man, by about 2022, they are really going to get a kick out of this. They're going to be like, holy, how did he know? That's the thought police. That's the thought police. Taking part in a discussion about that possibility. We might go to a protest and assemble peacefully. Subject to arrest, that's a warrant. Hey, we heard you were talking about maybe peacefully go. I'm not reading an article from The Onion. This is real. This is real. This is real news. This is really happening. It's a discussion. A protester could go to prison for participating in a peaceful protest or taking part in a discussion. They might talk about it. They might talk about it. Wow. The Minnesota legislation carries a penalty of up to 1 year in prison for those found guilty of recruiting, training, aiding, advising, or conspiring with trespassers. The penalty can be increased to 10 years, 10 years, 10 years if the trespasser intends to substantially disrupt the facility, as opposed to minimally disrupting it, or I guess not disrupting it at all. Well, the point of protest, you have to disrupt something. You have to interrupt the day-to-day of a city or an area because you are there and you are saying this is a cause that's important. So much so that you should be interrupted. That is the point of protesting. Otherwise, you're just sitting there or standing there or talking but by the way, talking, that's a felony. Talking is a felony. If you're planning, hey, we should protest somewhere. Oh, be careful. Be careful. War is peace. Don't say that. Don't say that. It's as if you ate real chocolate or had actual coffee. You can't say that anymore. What's conspiracy in this case? Conspiracy merely requires 2 or more people to agree to do something. And at least one of them to take some action to further that objective. Hey, there's 3 of us in a room. We're having a good time. We're chilling. I'm saying, hey, you know what? We should protest. We should protest this thing that's going on that's pretty lame sauce. You want to protest it? Yeah, I want to protest it. Person 3 also wants to protest. All 3 of us, we're down to protest. One of them goes out and checks a site, takes some notes, and reports back to us. Ladies and gentlemen, we just committed a crime. We just conspired. According to this legislation, we just conspired. That's happening in 6 states, in a land where peaceful protesters are brutalized, are beaten, are pummeled with freezing cold water, are executed, and are thrown in jail. That's already been happening, where journalists are thrown in jail or threatened with jail time. That happened in Dapple. Look up Amy Schlossberg. Look up Amy Goodman. That happened in Dapple. We decide we need legislation like this. We need legislation like this to deal with protesters. Because we got to protect our infrastructure. Our infrastructure that, by the way, we refuse to invest in.
If you enjoyed this clip of Aggressive Progressives, you know there's a 90-minute show waiting for you at the Young Turks Network. Go to tytnetwork.com/join to see all our content.